camera. You can turn the fitting. The pipe doesn't turn. You need flare nut wrenches to undo these. They're usually much tighter than pipe thread. Pipe thread is not tight. These crack loose, crack. You have to get these flare nut wrenches that go around, and they have 1, 2, 4 places where they grip. The nut. Can't believe I'm here working on this instead of at a car show. Oh, am I annoyed. Thought I'd make a video, take my mind off of it. Teflon tape. Make sure you do not get any in the opening, because it'll get into the needle and seat. And I remember reading once, 30, 40 years ago, some guy lost a drag race because he had Teflon tape on a fitting, and a little piece of it got onto the needle and seat, which is what controls your fuel level in your carburetor float, much the same as a toilet. And it flooded the engine, or whatever it did. They lost the race because of a drop of fuel, a drop of Teflon on the fuel line. So there, make sure you do it in the same directions, so when you thread it in, it's tightening the threads. Make sure there's nothing over the end, and then carefully put it into the fuel pump. Some people like to take off the excess Teflon so it shouldn't be visible. It's kind of ugly. Sell orange for gas lines, natural gas. You could use that, I guess. This is just 50 cents a roll. Buy it anywhere. 480 inches, which is a lot of inches. 30 something yards. 35, whatever it is. A lot. This was not tight either. So I'm going to tighten that until it's 90 degrees. I threw a bit of carb cleaner. Oops. Just put the T-fitting back in the old pump. Dum-diddy-dum-dum. Happens to us all. I won't say the best of us. I hardly qualify as the best. I'm just another guy trying to survive. Try to survive. I've been thinking of that second fellow, Stephen Sotloff, that was brutally murdered. I don't like to say the B word. It really bothers me. It really does. It really bothered me. We can get into the political aspect of it. Just bothered me a lot. Bothered me a lot. Really, really did. Here's a guy, 31 years old, trying to do the right thing. Spoke Arabic, trying to connect with these people, and instead he becomes a political pawn on the chess table. What a tragedy. Brutally murdered. There's a lot of mostly reporters that are kidnapped, and the newspapers don't publicize the details. I'm taking the Teflon tape off. They keep it quiet, and Canada, US, and Australia don't pay ransom. A lot of the European countries, France, they pay ransom. A few million dollars. So, gives them more money to kidnap more people. America doesn't pay ransom. We drop bombs. Getting back to this. Almost got my Teflon tape off. A wire brush does this a lot better. Let's try this again. This time I'll try to put it in the fuel pump that has the good O-ring in it. I transfer the softer O-ring and I'll put a drop of oil on it. I didn't get quite as smooth a start on this one. Gotta hold it for the first turn. You wind it in the direction so that when it's being tightened, it's tight. Teflon tape. Yeah, it could have been to a nice car show. Never been to that one before. This is the one, yeah, it's the lighter one. Ethanol. If this is even the problem, I don't even know if this is the problem. Don't know. All I know is I blew into the tank, saw the leak, then I blew backwards from the tank. I put the compressed air nozzle into the fuel tank, wrapped the cloth around it, held it really tight, and pressed it, and I heard bloom. I came to the back of the vehicle, and there was a cup of gas lying on the ground. So I did something. One more turn. Actually, that would have been enough. nice if I had a vise here, which I do, but I gotta drag the camera over and you're comfy just the way you are. As I tighten this, it gets wider, the thread. Could eventually split the fuel pump. Not the way I'm doing it with my hands. Alright. Make sure I don't have any grungy from the ground. Make sure the fittings are all clean inside, the threads are good. Got some goopy in there. Anyways, this motor needs a rebuild. I was talking to my buddy. Bloopy! I was talking to my buddy in Indiana with all the Corvairs. He said, oh, we could rebuild that in a weekend. Got to put new pistons in the 110 horsepower or 95 horsepower. The 64 and up engines need new pistons because the oil ring compresses. Pistons crack and collapse, and he says that's why you're burning oil. All the pistons are cracked. Hard to believe they're all cracked, every one of them. But this thing uses oil, man, to beat the band. I'll put a bit of oil into the... I'm using some transmission oil. It's the only good thing about this car having an automatic. Get a nice supply of lubricating fluid. Put a little bit on the threads. Never hoit. It never hoit. Then I'm having trouble with the Suburban. I floored it yesterday to get through an intersection, and now the transmission's not shifting. The throttle control valve controls my transmission shifting and pressures and speeds and time is stuck in the full throttle position, so until it jumps back I've got no shifting. Once it shifts like it's full throttle. See what I'm doing here? Push the fuel pump down, run down the nut, which is really hard to get to. It'd be nice if the engine mount wasn't there. Make sure you hold the fuel pump down. Take a 1/2 inch open-end wrench, or ratchet wrench is the best. I've got one back in the warehouse, just a few steps away. Might be able to get a ratchet in here. I don't think it'll fit. Engine mounts in the way, oil filters in the way. Tighten down the bolt, which pins the pump in place. It's a pointy bolt. And you tighten the lock nut with a 9/16, which is a tad bigger than 14 millimeters. Now I'm using a 1/2 inch on the set in place bolt, which is much smaller than 13 millimeters. Did you know that? 1/2 inch 1/2 is a fraction smaller than 13 1/3, and 14 is a fraction smaller than 9/16. 14, 15, 16. That's how I remember it. It's tight. Doesn't have to be too tight. Now you take a 9/16, which is on the ground from the fuel tee, and you tighten. You can't see in there. Plus it's sunny. Should have been at a car show instead. I'm stuck here. The lock nut was tightened before my set screw was all the way down. There. Where are we? There we are. Now we tighten the lock nut, 9/16 open end, so the set screw doesn't come loose and the fuel pump doesn't pop off and you lose fuel pressure. Which has happened a couple times in this car, but that wasn't the problem today. There. Alright, now I'll put my fuel lines back in with no Teflon tape. Make sure they're lined up. I'll show you what's going on in a minute.